This is for the free thinkers, the curious beings that swim upstream, who see possibilities, not problems, that learn from the past, live by the present, and create the future. This is the I Love Ugly audio show.
Welcome to the I Love Ugly audio show. My name is Valentin Ozic, creative director and founder of I Love Ugly. On this episode, I sit down with motivational speaker and personal development specialist, Dr. Paul Wood. Dr. Paul Wood's story is one of the most interesting I've come across in a while. At just 18 years old, Paul went to prison and his life was off the rails. By his release in 2006, he had attained an undergraduate degree in psychology and philosophy, a master's degree in psychology, and was 2 years into his Ph.D. Paul uses his journey to illustrate the process of change and how we can have lives of great meaning and purpose despite the circumstances and despite the environment. He's now an expert in helping people overcome their own barriers and become the best version of themselves. And he has just released his book, which I highly recommend, titled How to Escape from Prison. In this episode, Paul gives us advice on managing unpleasant emotional thoughts, the power of creating habits, and how it's never too late to redirect yourself in life. Like all my guests, I like to go deep and extract as much value as I can, and in this episode, it's no different. There's some real golden nuggets in here, and I also ask him some questions that would make some of you uneasy. Enjoy the episode. Dr. Paul, thank you for being here.
Such a pleasure.
So you just did a talk, in front of 100 people, was it just before? Or?
I'm not sure exactly how many, probably around that.
Yeah.
I actually find it's easier to do talks in front of lots of people than in a smaller number, because if you do a talk in front of a small number, you can see the whites of their eyes.
Yeah, interesting.
Whereas larger crowd, you can sort of, have a bit more distance from that.
Interesting. So you've carved yourself out a speaking career. What is it that you kind of do? I know, but for people that don't know, what do you do? Give us a little 2-minute version of who you are. And
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, my background's in an area of psychology that looks at how people differ from each other in terms of their attributes, their values, their tendencies. And what I basically do is I try to create the space for and communicate some key ideas that help people figure out what does a better version of me look like?
Yeah.
What its realistic expectations of myself? How can I be more self-accepting when it comes to the human struggle? So I spend more time doing what matters and what's true and authentic for me rather than worrying about worrying and thinking I'm supposed to be happy all the time or any of those sorts of things.
Yeah. Interesting. So, I know we've already discussed we're not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. But you did do a stint in prison.
Yeah,
and that's where
absolutely.
you did your master's in psychology, was it?
My undergraduate, my master's degree, started my doctorate.
So
I went in a high school dropout.
Yeah.
I thought I was someone who was dumb.
Yeah.
Or at least in terms of education, I never connected with it. But fortunately, I had an opportunity to take some steps to educate myself, to turn my life around, and I realized I wasn't dumb.
Yeah.
I was just mentally unfit. I'd never really exercised my mind, and it was like my body. If I regularly exercised it and used it, it'd get stronger and easier to work with.
Amazing. Right? And put that simply, it makes so much sense, yet a lot of people don't really understand it or don't even realize that. But my question was, you did the stint in prison, yet you pursued this, self-education and just to educate yourself on psychology and stuff. How the hell did you motivate yourself in that environment? Because you often hear about people blaming their environment and not being able to do things. You were in prison and you did that. How did you do that? How did you motivate yourself in a place like this?
Man, small steps. And I think this is key. I think often actually what we do is we over-rely on motivation instead of creating habits.
Yeah.
You're way better off creating habits than worrying about motivation.
Yeah.
If you can start taking small steps frequently that lead you in the right direction, before you know it, it takes less and less motivation for you to demonstrate that behavior, to live in that way. I mean, exercise is a classic example, right? So what most people do with exercise is they go out, all guns blazing, right? New year, I've got a gym membership, I'll go to the gym every day. How long does that last?
2 weeks.
2 weeks at most, right? They reckon that if everyone had a gym membership, showed up at the gym, it'd never survive, But the reality is you're way better off focusing on starting really small and just building incrementally over time. For example, it takes on average 3 months to build a new habit. If you wanted to get in the habit of going to the gym, for the first 3 months, it is legit to go to the gym and read a book. Because you're getting in the habit of going to the gym.
Interesting.
Once you've got in the habit of going to the gym, then you can worry about the intensity of the exercise and the rest of it. For the first 3 months, you're just building a habit. One of the secrets to me in terms of my success, in terms of being able to get in that habit and be disciplined in that way, was that I started really small. like I just started, I enrolled in, what would have been maybe 1/6 of a normal workload. And I wasn't starting to even study to do a degree. I didn't think I was capable of that. But it was just enough for me to occupy my time and to get into the habit of study so that I could continue to build the volume of what I was doing. And that's the way you do it. I mean, this is one of the key messages I always talk to people about, is that your brain has far greater similarity with the rest of your physical body than you're aware of, because your brain's hidden in your skull, it seems less tangible. But the reality is you want to think of it like the rest of your physicality. You want to think of it like your muscles. The muscles you exercise get stronger, get easier to use. It's natural to get fatigued, to get worn out. You have to look after yourself. There's all sorts of things you need to be doing to be at peak performance, right? It's the same mentally as it is physically.
Absolutely. So why aren't we educated about this stuff at school? Because the way you're putting it makes so much sense. It can actually resolve so many problems, yet why aren't we taught about it?
I think it goes back to the idea that really our emotional experiences haven't been something that have had a lot of value placed on them historically. Particularly...
Is it because we can't see it?
I think so. I think it's less tangible, therefore it's less certain. Also as well, if you want to look at the history of science, there was this whole movement towards empiricalism, which is about only being able to study the tangible and observable and measurable. Whereas the stuff in here, I mean, in psychology, for example, for a long time, you had the behavioralist movement, which basically said what goes on between your ears is the black box. We're not interested. We're only interested in observable behavior. So it's hardly surprising that education has more tended to focus on tangible skills and things that can be done rather than the inner game, really. But the inner game is where it's at, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
In terms of the human experience, that's the stuff you want to be working on.
Definitely. And you see the people that have, the top performers like the Conor McGregors and the Israels and the All Blacks even, and they're performing up here, skill-wise, physicality, probably muscle, everything, but probably on par with everybody else. Maybe they're a little bit better, bit fitter, but it's the stuff that they practice in private is what they get rewarded for in public, right? So it's the stuff 100%. That kind of goes on in between, as you said, the black space, and that's also something people don't realize as well, which I find almost astonishing. And I know personally that's what got me through some bad experiences. I know that's what got you through a lot of that adversity and kind of helped you create the man in which you are today. What would be if somebody, because obviously we've got a lot of young listeners, we got people that are just beginning on this journey of, say, personal development, we got people that are, they might be at another level where business is going good, spiritually it's good, their relationships are good. What advice would you give someone that's just starting on this journey and just can't figure shit out? They're like, fuck, I feel lost, I feel depressed, I don't know what to do. What advice would you give to that person?
The first thing I would say is all of those experiences are completely normal. The struggle is real. I mean, you use those examples of people who are sorted in all of these areas, and I'm skeptical, I got to tell you, because I think when we look at others, we often judge them based on these external factors that we assume are indicative of some deeper happiness and the rest of it. Whereas the reality is, the brain you carry around in your skull is one which is oriented towards identifying threats and feeling unpleasant emotions, because that's the way it's evolved.
Is that to protect us as well?
100%. Think about this, right? Out of your potential ancestors, the ones who survived to reproduce and contribute to the gene pool were not the ones who tended to assume the best whenever they were uncertain. It wasn't the ones who heard the rustling in the bush and went, oh, that'll be something exciting, I'll put my head in there. It was the ones who heard the rustling in the bush and went, I'm going to be scared right now and assume the worst because that'll help me be more careful. It was the ones who, when they saw the rain clouds on the horizon, went, I'm going to be worried about that and find shelter. It was the ones who, when they noticed their food supplies were dwindling, went, I'm going to be worried about that, find more food. It was not the ones that heard their baby crying and went, she'll be right, who raised viable offspring to contribute to the gene pool. You have a disproportionate number of brain cells of neurons devoted to threat detection and unpleasant emotion. And an evolutionary psychologist would tell you have a Stone Age brain in the modern world. Your brain is still adapted for that period where you were a nomadic tribes person. That's what your brain's geared for. And think about this from your own experience, right? So I know you've started your own business before. Have you ever worked for someone before? You ever been employed by someone?
Yep. Yeah, okay. Since I was 14, I had jobs.
Right, so this is a common experience for people who've been employed. You ever had any kind of like performance review or conversation around how you were going, where the vast majority of things mentioned were really positive, but there were one or two things you could be doing differently or better?
Yep.
What did you walk away remembering and focused on?
The bad things.
Of course, right, because that stuff's stickier for your brain. The way your brain has evolved is that you're wired for lots of misery and suffering, regardless of your external factors, external success factors. It doesn't matter how much money you have, how good your job, how attractive and charming your wife or partner, it doesn't matter, none of that stuff matters. You're carrying around in the skull this thing which is geared towards finding things that are wrong and worrying about them. One of my favorite Mark Twain quotes is, "I'm an old man who's experienced many troubles in my life, most of which never happened." So I think recognizing that the struggle is normal and is real, and just being more self-accepting around your emotions. I think some of the messages young people are sold today are so unhelpful, such as, you should always feel happy and in control. Not with your brain you won't, not in this world you won't. So if you walk around thinking you're supposed to feel happy all the time, you're not supposed to feel unpleasant emotions, then what happens is when you feel those, is you think they're a threat to you. You try and avoid them. You try and get away from them.
Totally.
Right?
And you mask them with drugs or alcohol.
100%. And I'll tell you what, that which you resist persists. That comes from a psychologist, Jung. And the stuff that you don't face in your life, the things that make you feel those unpleasant emotions are signals your brain is sending you about the choices you're making, about how your life's going. And if you ignore those, if you resist those are going to persist. You have to face that stuff. But you also have to accept that stuff. That as a member of this species, you're going to have lots of unpleasant emotions. They're not a threat to be avoided. They're a challenge to be embraced. They're a sign that you're actually trying to do something meaningful with your life, and that you're a member of the species. And if you can just be more self-accepting around them, make space for them, recognize them as a challenge to be managed, not a threat to be avoided, you'll have a far more meaningful life.
Interesting. And wow, that's a lot to digest, but I think it makes perfect sense as well. So it's almost what you're saying is, as you progress and as you start, more problems are going to arise, and you're better to be comfortable with being uncomfortable
100%.
Rather than shining away from it and thinking that you're this is abnormal, this shouldn't be happening to me because I'm supposed to be progressing.
Exactly right.
That's a dumb simplified version of what you're saying essentially.
No, that is exactly it. Being comfortable with discomfort. That is the goal. Not to not have discomfort. Not to have unpleasant emotions, but to be less sucked into them, less consumed by them.
So if it's, because would you also agree that you could, for some people, they just can be consumed with negative emotions and bad, and is there ways where you can settle it down, say through exercise, breathing, personal development, just feeding your mind with actual proper nutrients, as opposed to just binging on Netflix or other bullcrap Instagram or things like that, which are just constantly giving you little dopamine hits, and you come out of it and you look at your own life and you're like, fuck, my life sucks compared to this person on Instagram. So is there other...
At least compared to what you see of that person on Instagram,
Yes,
anyway.
Well, they just give you the peep under the hood of the stuff that you want to see, and they want to show you rather than the truth. So you're saying that, what is some remedies though for people that are, say for example, someone's depressed, they want to kill themselves, like it's, shit serious, they don't know what to do or who to tell or how to go about the next steps. What advice would you give to that person?
To that person, they need to be looking for external support. By the time you get to that stage...
And how do they ask for that if they got to the point now where they emotionally very unintelligent?
Well, I think that's the struggle, right? Is actually recognizing that you're at a point here where you are psychologically and emotionally injured. And the only way to remedy that effectively is by getting external support. Again, it's about thinking about this stuff as comparable to the rest of your physical body. If I break my leg, I'm debilitated there. I can't move properly. I'm in a lot of pain. What's the solution? The solution is to go to a doctor, right? It's the same with the stuff between your ears. If you reach that point where you are having depressive experiences to that extent, where you're thinking about suicide, the only path is to seek help and support. The key thing I would say to you, V, is actually to get better at identifying when you're on that path towards that level of injury.
So the early warning signs.
Preempting it.
Yes, yeah.
Preempting it. This is one of the problems, right? See, when I talk about this stuff, I do a lot of time doing workshops around how can you build your capacity to cope with the stress and pressure as you experience it, which in psychology is called mental toughness or grit, and then bounce back and recover afterwards, which is called resilience. But I always position it as mental fitness because I'm trying to parallel on those similarities with physical fitness. For example, right? Have you ever done any events before? You ever gotten really physically fit and done any endurance events?
I wanted to be a pro soccer player.
Right. Okay. So when you're at your peak of fitness, did that mean that you didn't ever feel tired or fatigued?
I still felt tired and fatigued. Absolutely.
Of course you did, right? Yeah. Having a high level of fitness means that you can push further and persevere through the suffering and the misery for longer before you're completely exhausted and then you bounce back quicker. That's what physical fitness is. Yeah. The same psychologically and emotionally, right? If you're mentally tough and resilient, it does not mean you don't feel the struggle. It just means you can cope with it more effectively for longer and recover from it quicker. But if you're someone who isn't good at recognizing the signs that you're getting fatigued, or who thinks, I'm not supposed to feel any of these emotions, then you're not going to be very good at easing up the pace, so that you can recover as you go, and you will end up exhausted. Yeah. And emotionally and psychologically, that's where you start getting into that problematic territory.
Interesting. So how does someone get mentally fit then?
Recognizing that it's like physical fitness is something you need to be proactive and deliberate about.
So being very distinctive, okay, this is something I need to take care of, like a body part or...
100%.
Yeah, okay.
And think about that, right? Like you can have a normal level of physical fitness without doing exercise, just based on your day-to-day activity. You know, you get out of bed, you go to the bus, you pick something up, give you a base level of physicality. And it's the same with mental toughness and resilience. You know, life's general sort of knocks and challenges will give you a certain amount. But if you want to be anywhere near your potential, either physically or mentally and emotionally, you need to be structured and deliberate about it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's some basic stuff, like the foundations you always talk about, sleep, diet, and exercise, right?
Yeah.
If you're not getting the sleep you need, and the average number of hours is 7 to 9, 68% of people need between 7 and 9 hours sleep a night. If you're not getting that on a regular basis, you know, you're starting pre-fatigued.
Yeah.
You've reduced your capacity to cope and be effective in the first place. Nutrition, you know, that's just about the quality of food you're putting in your body. My wife's a nutritionist by training, and what she told me is that there's all sorts of things you can focus on, but the simple rule of thumb is this: the more processed something is, the worse it'll be for you. The more steps removed from its natural state it is, the worse it'll be for you.
So once again, very simple.
Right.
If it's in the packet,
But what are some of the things we do, right, when we're focused on our diet and nutrition? Is we engage in things like calorie restriction. We make ourselves hungry. That's not sustainable. Another great thing my wife told me about this is that actually what you want to do is you don't want to make yourself hungry. You just want to change the proportion of your food, which is better quality. So eat the same, eat more even, but just less processed stuff.
Definitely.
And then there's the whole exercise bit, right? Now, some people have a mental barrier when it comes to exercise. They hear exercise and they think it's not pleasant and they don't like it.
Yeah.
But again, that goes back to that idea that you're supposed to like stuff. Yeah. And it's supposed to be pleasant all the time, right?
Yeah.
It really isn't.
Yeah.
Most of the best stuff for you is stuff that involves some challenge.
Yes, sweat, increased heart rate, bit of pain.
And that's how you get a sense of satisfaction, achievement. You know, the original Greek word that happiness is a derivative of, it didn't relate to this transitory emotional experience of feeling pleasant all the time. It related to the joy and satisfaction you get as you strive towards your potential. And that is not about feeling pleasant and comfortable all the time. That is about embracing challenges that have a bit of hardness associated with them and overcoming those. And exercise is like that. Think about this. Exercise is a modern invention. When you're a member of a nomadic tribe for which your brain and your body has evolved, there was no need for this thing called exercise.
Because they're doing it anyway?
Right, because your day-to-day life required so much movement. That's the normal, natural thing for us. So if you're someone listening who has a barrier when you hear the word exercise, just think about it as making sure you're getting enough movement in your body. You're moving enough. And I'll tell you what, it's crucial. When you exercise, flushes cortisol out of your system. That's the stress-related hormone associated with negative health outcomes, increases energy levels during the day, helps you sleep at night, releases endorphins where you feel better about yourself and others. And check this out, prompts neural regeneration.
Which means what?
Which means it makes you smarter.
Interesting.
Now, I know some of your listeners are going to be sitting there thinking, I know people who exercise heaps who are dumbass. Without exercise, they'd be even dumber. It literally makes you smarter. It's one of the best things you can be doing for yourself. But again, the problem is what we do is we get into these spirals of poor diet, poor sleep, lack of motivation for exercise. But it's the small steps that make big differences.
As what you said at the beginning of the conversation, small habits, get the momentum, start falling in love with the process. When you face adversity, just tell yourself, okay, it means I'm making progress. Don't eat stuff out of the packet. It's actually all quite simple, really. Yeah.
100%. And it goes to this idea that I just talk about all the time, and just the idea that the goal here is getting better, not being good.
Yeah.
Right? It's getting better. Because this is the problem, right? You inhabit a society where the majority of the time you get these messages that you're supposed to be good at whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
On that basis, when you fail, you think, I wasn't good enough. Whereas actually, if you think that your goal is getting better, then when you fail, you realize that's an opportunity to learn and grow and come back stronger. Right? That risking failure is part of how you get better.
Yeah.
But also, it completely shifts your comparison and your measure of progress. If you think your goal is to be good at stuff, then you compare yourself to other people. Oh, am I as good and successful as V? I started a business. I didn't make as much money as you that quickly in terms of your original business. Oh my God, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
But actually, you're not a measure for me. You're not a legit comparison because you don't have my life story. You don't have my advantages, my disadvantages, the ingredients that make me who I am. So my only legitimate measure of progress and success as a human being is who was I yesterday and who am I going to be tomorrow?
Yeah.
And as long as there is small incremental improvement, then I am getting better. And that's what it means to be on the path as a human being. It means small incremental progress. It means getting better, not being good. Most important things in my life, husband and father, regularly fail. Daily fail to be who I'd want to be in those roles.
Yeah.
But that's all good because my goal is not to be a good husband and a good father. It is to be a better husband and a better father. So those failures are how I learn and grow. And as long as tomorrow's version of me is that little bit better than today's, man, I'm on the path. That's what it means. That's what human growth is about.
Absolutely. And do you feel that that's where goals are so important and so imperative as well? Because it's almost like you're playing a game of rugby and without any goalposts or a scoreboard, you don't know what the hell's going on. This is mumble jumble. Would you say goals as well is almost something as well to chuck into the mix?
It's really interesting actually, a lot of the latest research that's coming around out in this area. I used to be so big on the psychology of goals and it's been really important to me.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that's coming out that's actually suggesting developing habits which will generalize to make you successful with any goal or in any context are more important than goals themselves.
Yeah.
So say, for example, getting in the habit of looking after yourself. That will enable you to be effective in any environment you find yourself in, relative to just focusing on some external thing that you can achieve, tick off your list of things to do, and you think will give you some sense of real meaning and happiness. Because it won't. I mean, the people, who are elite athletes who end up in the Olympics and stuff like this, they're more prone to depression and anxiety related issues than normal people. Often that drives the need for achievement, but also it results in what's called goal then whole. And this is where you get the Olympics. Maybe you win a medal, maybe you win a gold medal, and then you come out the other end of it going,
depressed.
I've still got this hole in me. It hasn't filled the hole.
Interesting.
You are way better off cultivating helpful habits that in any situation will serve you well. And in terms of goals, the most useful goals that you can cultivate if you want to have a life of greater meaning and satisfaction and well-being is the goal of living your values on a daily basis.
Interesting. So with that and a set of values, how does someone go about actually writing down their values or figuring out what the hell a value is?
Right, and there's different ways to explore this. And in fact, that's one of the key ideas is actually, look, you can do heaps, right? You can actually get like a basic values quiz that lists the common ones, lists that you can think about. If I was diagnosed with a terminal illness and I was going to die in 5 years, what would I most want to spend my time on, and what does that tell me about what I place value on, what's important to me? There's all sorts of stuff you can do there. But actually, just going out and trying stuff in life, just exposing yourself to different situations, different people, and then figuring out, what do I find really satisfying?
Interesting.
What is it that actually gives me a real sense of satisfaction and meaning in what I'm doing? And remember, satisfaction isn't the same thing as happiness, eh?
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily feel easy or comfortable, but it's satisfying, and that's a deeper
Probably
thing.
fills that hole, sorry.
Right.
Yes.
And that's the thing, when it comes to figuring out your path as a human being, what's true and what's authentic for you, No one else can tell you that. You can't just Google it and get the answer. It's what's called an adaptive challenge.
Yes.
An adaptive challenge is something where the only way to progress effectively is to be brave enough to explore, to get out of your comfort zone, to take risks, to fail and learn. That is the only way to figure it out.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, that's very fascinating. And I always feel that once you start almost, because there's also a lot of business owners as well that follow this, also once you start applying a set of values and principles, guiding principles to the business, it almost helps you as well in order to make correct decisions. It's like, okay, there might be a situation, it's like, okay, I'll go to our set of values to figure out how to handle this. And you can have that throughout the whole organization, so people almost, beneath the top can start making decisions without, asking the leader what to do. So it's not only effective in personal life, but also businesses, sports teams, because I understand you do a lot of work with sports teams and you've done a little bit of work, should I say?
Yeah, I've done a bit of work with some of the rugby franchises and that. But look, and most of my time is actually spent in workplaces and organisations running leadership and other types of programs around that mental fitness. But the reality is you can look at elite athletes, you can look at elite performers in the workplace, you can look at people who are really elite in other areas that are relevant in their lives. You can look at people who are normal. The reality is the gift of the human experience is the same. It's just the wrapping that's different in respect to those different industries and different contexts.
Yeah.
That's why I so admire the work of people like JK and Mike King and others who have reached really high levels in their respective careers, but then have actually been courageous enough and willing to contribute enough to actually say, hey, even when I was there, the struggle was real for me too. It doesn't matter what you place value on, what you focus on. The struggle's real for everyone. It just looks differently for different people.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think, I work in those different areas, but the similarity holds, and that's been more self-accepting, more realistic around what the journey of progress and growth looks like, which is getting better, not being good, not comparing yourself to others. One of the most interesting things I've heard recently as well in terms of sports is, of course, I'm naturally a very competitive person and like sports myself. And my wife is a very successful cross-country mountain biker. It's become her focus over the last sort of bit over a year, and she's really put in the effort and really got the rewards in terms of how she's performing there. And one of the things that was discussed as part of her exercise and sport master's degree she's doing was the value of focusing on yourself rather than trying to beat people as an elite performer. And that's a really different lens for most people, because most people who are in sport are like, okay, well, we need to defeat this other team, we need to do better than them. Whereas actually, if you're just focused on that individual mastery, am I going out and being better each time? Am I doing my best when I perform? You'll be far more effective and you have far higher levels of well-being regardless of the outcome.
And so do you think the champions, the people that are just at the top, the number ones, they just want to become a better, far better version of themselves than the guy next to them?
Yeah, 100% right. And it's about the willingness to sacrifice. And that's one of the things. If you want to be really elite in any area, how much are you prepared to sacrifice those other areas of your life? And there'll be different stages in your life where, you answer that question differently. Like I've got a wife I love, I've got young kids who are the most important thing in my life, 2 and 5.
Oh, wow.
So I'm not prepared to sacrifice my time with them to build an empire with my business or anything. I love what I'm doing and having the ability to engage with people like yourself to scale up and hopefully have a positive impact on a larger number of people than I would have if I'm just talking, at events like this. But the reality is I want to make decisions which are in line with what most matters to me, and that means getting better at what I do, but placing value on the right things and recognizing what those are.
So once again, values. So if you're one of your main values, say if like, becoming a great father isn't on your list of values, you probably will get that edge on the person beneath you who that is a value, because you're okay and you feel content with spending less time with them to give yourself a bit more of an edge. Would you say that's
until it's the end of your days?
Yes.
Right. Until you look back and go,
you feel a regret or
yeah. One of the most common deathbed regrets is, I wish I hadn't worked so much.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you pursuing? And now, make no mistake, there are different points in your life. Like often when you're younger and you don't perhaps have kids, that sort of stuff, All good.
Guns
Sacrifice
blazing.
time, guns blazing. But when you reach a period where, you're at a different stage in life, then you really want to think carefully around what's going to matter to you most at the end of your days. But here's a really interesting question as well to reflect on. This is a good one for your listeners, because when it comes to your values versus how you behave. So when you're a child, what you're doing primarily is you're paying attention to try and figure out, how can I be worthy? How do I need to navigate the terrain that is my relationships, that is this world, so that I can be seen and valued, so that I can be worthy?
Yeah.
And where that comes from is we're members of a tribal species. So originally, if you were a member of a tribe, you better be seen and valued by others. You better be seen as a contributor. Otherwise, you're not adding value to the tribe, right?
Out.
So we have this deep-seated need for that has really good evolutionary origins. But what we do as kids is we look and we interpret the signals we're receiving from those who are most important to us at that stage. And if you were lucky enough to grow up in a two-parent household, the chances are is there probably would have been one parent who you had to work that much harder to get the love and approval from. And often they will be the biggest influence on who we think we need to be as we progress and as we grow. So a really interesting question to ask yourself is, who is it I thought I needed to be to get the love and approval of that harder to reach parent? And it's not a judgment on that parent, because often as a kid, you're interpreting a message which isn't necessarily the message being sent, right? So say, for example, my father's a really quiet guy. He's definitely what you consider to be an introverted man. And so he'd come back from work and he's had his people quota for the day. He's home, he just needs some time out, some me time. He'd be behind the newspaper, reading newspaper. That's what you used to do before phones and that sort of stuff. And I interpreted some of that as, don't disturb me, sort things out yourself, stand on your own 2 feet. That's not the message he was actually trying to communicate, but that's how I interpreted it as a kid. And on that basis, I didn't grow up thinking I should ever need someone's help, anyone's support. And it wasn't just my dad, that's a societal message for men as well a lot of the time.
Of course.
Whereas, of course, as an adult, what you want to do is you want to think about, who was it I thought I needed to be to get that parent's love and approval? And is that really true and authentic for me? For example, do I still think that I shouldn't need anyone's help or support? Absolutely not. As members of a tribal species, real success, that is a team effort. The only reason I'm sitting here today is because of massive amounts of support and opportunities I had from others. But I needed to be brave enough to risk rejection by asking for help and opportunities, right? If I was just busy sitting here going, oh no, I shouldn't need anyone's help, and any opportunities from others, do it all myself, I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am right now.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's a very great question to ask. And as I said, I went to Tony Robbins a few years ago, and that was one of the exercises that she did. It's like, who did you seek approval from, your mother or your father? In my case, it was my father. Immigrant from Croatia, hard-nosed worker, 6 children, parents together. He's worked a hard day in the field, comes home, and he wants to decompress. Last thing he wants to do is answer questions from his son about life. And I interpreted that as well, almost like rejected, or fathers are there to basically be your father, not your friend. I had that distinction when I've got 3 children. When I had my daughter, that's how I started to kind of play it out. And I realized that because of that, our relationship was becoming distant. And then I realized that was because of the interpretation I had with my own father. But now I've changed the meaning to be my meaning and congruent with my set of values, which is, my daughter, yes, I am her father, so there's obviously boundaries, but I want basically her to download every bit of information, every bit of experience which I've acquired in my journey of life. And I think that's a great exercise for a lot of people as well, just to ask themselves, who did I seek approval from? If they weren't fortunate enough to grow up with their mother and father, it might have been an auntie or an older brother or a cousin.
Or a teacher. There would have been people in their lives,
definitely,
for sure.
Just role models, and we've all got role models, whether we know it consciously or not, and just ask yourself, okay, how did this person affect my life? But is it the actual truth about the way I interpreted it? And I think, I think it's a very valid point. Just to kind of switch it up, and something I wanted to ask you, and it's a bit of an extreme question, but you've got someone that may have been raped, you have someone that may have, lost their wife and children in a car accident, or someone that may have been bankrupt and lost their business that has taken them 20 years to build on, and a lot of their identity was associated with that, and they are just rock bottom. How does someone
you often hear stories of people that have experienced those types of experiences, yet they bounce back.
Yeah.
But you also hear about people that just go completely the other way. How do different people go to different paths based on those experiences?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Of course, most of what we hear is about post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yep.
Things like this, you experience a serious trauma and it causes you a level of damage that reduces your well-being and experience suffering ongoing. But what very few people are familiar with is post-traumatic growth. And this is something which is experienced by an equal number of people who have had extreme hardship and trauma. And this means at the time of the trauma, it was equally bad for them.
Yep.
It was equally miserable. But they actually come out the other end and look at it and go, as terrible as that was, I actually feel I've grown as a person as a result of that experience.
Yeah.
And one of the ironies here is just being aware of the fact that you can experience post-traumatic growth
Yep.
reduces the likelihood you'll get post-traumatic stress disorder. Because again, it's the way our brain works, right? If your only reference point is that people who go through trauma are permanently damaged with post-traumatic stress disorder, you worry about that happening to you and it makes it more likely that it's going to happen to you. One of the most useful things that the US Defence Force has done to reduce the likelihood of PTSD in active service troops is make them aware of post-traumatic growth. So that at the time, they can actually activate a different part of your brain, which is more around the approach part of your brain rather than the avoidant part associated with PTSD. But also as well, one of the things I'd say is some people have some different natural tendencies in terms of how they view and perceive things, which lend themselves to coping and recovering more effectively from challenging circumstances. But these are things that you can learn to cultivate deliberately. And there's three basic things. One of them that you associate with long-term problems and challenges is the feeling that your trauma and the unpleasant emotions you're experiencing are permanent.
Yep.
If you can be actively and deliberately reminding yourself, telling yourself that this isn't permanent, this is going to change, things will get better, that is crucial in terms of being able to recover and come out the other end effectively. So that's the first thing.
Interesting.
Not seeing things as permanent. That's one of the challenges with serious depression is when you think it's permanent and therefore suicide is the best course of action to end your suffering.
Which is also, sorry to interrupt,
No, go on.
but when you're having great times, you think it's going to last forever. When you're having shit times, you think it's going to last forever. So that's a very good point. So be aware that nothing's forever.
Not permanent. This too shall pass, is the old Persian proverb.
Yes, I love that quote.
There was the richest man, the king of Persia, and he got his three wise men together and he said to them, I want you to go and create a ring for me that will make me feel happy when I'm sad. And what they did is they went out and they spoke about this, they explored these different jewelers and that, and he fully expected them to come back with some massive, gold diamond encrusted thing. Instead, they came back with a simple ring with the inscription in it, this too shall pass.
Wow.
Whenever you're feeling misery, this too shall pass. But the irony there is, of course, is the same as true when you're feeling your best and your happiness. This too shall pass. That's the way your brain works. It's a good thing to remind yourself, nothing's permanent. So that's the first thing, it's not permanent. The second thing is that people who are more likely to really or find challenge when they're trying to recover from extreme situations are people who lose sight of the fact that there's anything going okay for them. So they see the issues as pervasive. It's like a drop of ink in a glass of water. The negative stuff in your life discolors everything else. So if you can force yourself away from seeing things as pervasive by really deliberately trying to focus on and remind yourself of the things that are going okay with your life, that will help counter that.
And there's always going to be something that's going okay.
Of course, man. There's always something which is going okay.
Yeah.
There will always be something. You just need to really make sure that that's what you're searching for, because again, it's so easy with the way our minds work to just get sucked into that vortex of focusing and only noticing the negative. And then the third thing is to try and depersonalize what's happening to you.
Meaning?
So what I mean is recognizing that this happens to other people too. It's not only you, and it's not because of you. Because what happens is when people see things as permanent, pervasive, and personalized, so they think what's happening to them doesn't happen to other people, this is just me having this experience, and it's happening because I'm not good enough, it's my fault. you are way more likely to suffer long-term negative outcomes
Wow.
than if you can cultivate that mentality that this isn't permanent, it'll pass, things will get better. There are things that are going okay for me. This is terrible, but there are some good things. And look, this happens to other people. Other people survive and get through this. It's not just happening to me, and it's not because of me. It's not my fault.
Interesting.
And that's how you cultivate a sense of...
Sorry to interrupt. What if it is their fault?
Well, then, you know, I suppose you can look at that and go, there are definitely situations where, you know, you need to be able to own your own behaviour.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about things like rape, cancer, stuff like that,
Yeah.
even sometimes when it comes to things like business failures and that sort of stuff, you know, you can be doing everything you can and circumstances outside of your control take hold. I would say in those circumstances, then it is 100% not your fault. In fact, one of the biggest causes of ongoing PTSD is sexual abuse experiences. And one of the most common reasons that that is prolonged and carries on throughout people's lives is their sense of shame that it was in some way their fault, that they should have stopped it, they shouldn't have been wearing that short skirt, they shouldn't have smiled at that person, they shouldn't have attracted it. So actually being able to recognize that, hey, you know, this isn't my fault, this isn't because I'm not good enough. And I think that's the key there perhaps. It's not that you're not accountable for your own decisions, but the cause is not some inherent unworthiness within you, some I'm not good enough in some way. It's nothing about you. You can feel guilt. This is, I suppose this is the importance. You want to feel guilt when you make mistakes, not shame. So guilt is the emotional experience you have when you feel you've done something wrong that can motivate you to learn and do better going forward. Shame is the feeling you have when you think it's because you're unworthy and you're broken and you're irredeemable.
Interesting.
That's the difference. When you make a mistake, you want to know that this is guilt I'm feeling. That's the motivation for change. It's not shame. It's not about who I am in some inherent way.
So it's almost amazing how you can just, by simply changing the word, it changes the definition and the whole meaning of a situation. It can change your trajectory and the way you deal with it.
What was it you said before about, you know, in terms of your parenting? Did you change the narrative?
I changed the narrative, and I changed my perspective, and I also just understood. I basically put myself in my father's shoes as opposed to seeing it from my perspective, which was somewhat selfish because there's always two perspectives. And it gave me a whole new meaning, whole new outlook. Now I've got an amazing relationship with my father. And now I can ask him all the stuff which I wanted to ask him, and I can get an even better answer because he's also got more time as well, you know? So it's, So
that's the thing, right? You could have proceeded and carried on with that script, right? That script that you had sort of developed, that narrative that you'd written and been a part of growing up. But instead, you chose to adopt the empowered position and go, I can rewrite the story here. I can rewrite the script. And I'll tell you this right now, no matter how bad the situation, no matter the mistakes you've made or the level of challenge you're experiencing, you can choose to rewrite the script. You can be the author of your own destiny based on how you choose to proceed and go forward right now. But the key thing there is, it's the little steps, it's the little changes that make big differences. Because the goal's getting better, not being good.
Definitely. And what about are you okay with time? And how much time you got?
I reckon we're okay with time for about another 10.
Perfect. Cool. Yeah, perfect. What about addictions? People that are addicted to alcohol, drugs, porn, addicted to, you know, just bad addictions that are consuming their lives. Firstly, my question is, how do they develop? And secondly is, how do they break those habits?
Okay, so just to clarify, I'm someone who's, you know, had addiction issues myself in my life, which
I think we all
got me
do.
into trouble. They look differently for different people.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, maybe it's like an exercise addiction. That's probably one of the healthier ones you can have, although it derails some marriages and that. But look, I wanted to say that I have personal experience, but I wouldn't consider myself a deep expert in this area.
Okay.
But what I would say is, underlying any addiction and addictive tendency really is an inner pain. You know, it's a hole that someone's trying to fill. It's a pain that someone's trying to deal with. I mean, if you actually look at it, and a lot of people don't like discussing this. I mean, I'm not someone who uses drugs whatsoever at any point in my life, but actually the majority of people who use and consume drugs do not have addiction problems. They're social users. So what's the difference between someone who can use the same drugs but then carry on and go to work on Monday and be fine versus someone who derails their life through an addiction? You know, a couple of key factors are, do you have a sense of purpose in your life? do you actually have something?
So
that
the
you're
functioning
working with?
ones, they've got a job, they've got a family, they've got priorities,
They've got
so they're a functioning addict. Whereas, interesting.
They've got purpose.
Interesting.
Okay, they've got purpose, and what they also have is life stability factors.
Yeah.
If you lack a sense of purpose and meaning, if you're just adrift, floating, and don't feel that you've got some vehicle for your energy that gives you a sense of meaning and purpose, you're doing something that matters, and then you lack life stability factors like, say, a job, a family, those sorts of things, that's when you're in the territory where addiction is far more likely to take hold and be problematic for you. Whereas that, going back to those sense of values, the sense of meaning, the sense of purpose, that really does provide an inoculating effect against some of those tendencies you might otherwise have.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. And then what about what's your view on like people that, you know, when you are just switching it up from addictions to, say, adversity, and people gravitate towards prayer or God or spirituality? Do you think that's also an important factor as well, that people do need? I don't know if you're religious yourself, but do you feel that people do need to they do need something like that, some acknowledgement of the spiritual world as well? Because I know for me personally, when I went through all my crap, and I was bad, you know, I was like, if there's a pill out there, I will take it. You know, I wanted to run from the hills. I just wanted to basically curl up and just end it all. For some reason, I started going to church again. And for some reason, it filled a huge gap in my life, and it basically put me on a path to the man I am today. This was 24 months ago. So what's your point of view on that, being a psychologist?
I think it's different things for different people.
Yeah.
And I think religion and spirituality provide a real deep sense of meaning and purpose for a lot of people that help them live better lives. I also think that one of the things that you get from formalized religious practice, such as going to church, is actually a deep sense of connection and identity with a community. And I think that is such a crucial inoculating factor against, you know, the biggest challenges we'll have in life and addictions and the rest of it.
Yeah.
If you feel a genuine sense of belonging and community and shared identity with others outside of your immediate family, outside of your work colleagues, that is such a powerful thing, because again, we've evolved to be members of a social species. You know, it's natural that our brain makes us experience real emotional pain when we don't feel that sense of tribe, that sense of connection and belonging.
Yeah.
So being able to find that via a vehicle such as religion or church, worship, other such things is crucial.
That's probably why people join gangs even.
100%
They get
it
that
is.
same meaning.
100% it is. You know, it gives you a sense of belonging, a sense of identity, a sense
Yes.
of community. So I would say it can be incredibly valuable for people. And what we know from the research is if you have a religious and a spiritual outlook, that will tend to provide an inoculating factor against stress and challenge. It'll make it easier for you to cope. It's not the path for everyone.
Yes.
I'm an atheist.
Yep.
I don't have that outlook, but I found a different vehicle for myself. Evolution actually was something that really liberated me in terms of a concept, because it made me realize that all of the stuff I was experiencing was normal. And also it made me realize that actually I was walking around all this time thinking that everything I did and everyone's judgments of me were so important, when really I was way more insignificant than that. And that wasn't a diminishing realization, that was a liberating one. It meant, actually I can just start to not worry about other people's views and opinions, and I can start to just do what's right and true for me. And that was the vehicle.
Yeah.
So it's different paths for different people.
Yeah, yeah.
It really is, but I think you have something which gives you a greater sense of purpose and meaning.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. Just to kind of give us a bit of closure, I'm just going to ask you some questions as well. What's a book or a couple of books you can recommend to our audience, just to kind of, obviously you got your own book.
Yeah.
So
that's why I was smart. I was going to say, well, obviously, how to escape from prison.
Yeah, firstly, tell people about your own book, and then just also another few which you highly recommend that just basically read and light bulbs went off for you as well that can help them out.
Cool. My book recently published, and is the best feedback I've been getting around it is people are reading it really quickly.
Awesome.
Because that's always a good sign, when people read. Because I've got books on my nightstand that I like the subject matter of, but are abandoned. Because they're just not that
too
easy
dense.
to read.
Or, definitely.
So no, it's good in that respect.
So tell people about the name of your book.
How to Escape from Prison
And where to
is what
buy
it's
it.
called. You can get it from any bookshop In New Zealand, you can also get it on Kindle,
So
Audible.
internationally they can get it as well?
Yeah, internationally you get it from places like
Great.
Mighty Ape, that
awesome.
sort of thing. And that should be readily available.
How long did it take you to write that book?
It was in the process for over 10 years.
Wow. And was it
Most of it was written when I was in prison.
Wow.
The prison memoir, and then it was tidied up and finished off over a process of about a year, I suppose.
Wow. Yep.
And published in September, I think it was now. And that was a real process.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But look, books that I've really enjoyed, I loved Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers.
Oh yes, fantastic book.
Okay, because it's a book which is about success being about the effort you put in.
Yeah.
Right? It's about your willingness to actually put in the hard yards practice, because that's something we don't like to talk about in modern society, because we want it all to be easy.
Yeah.
And we look at people who succeed in big ways and we go, oh, well, they're just really talented and capable. We don't see all the hard work, all the sacrifices that's behind
the scenes.
And again, look, success, it's going to be more relevant for different people in different areas, but it's all going to require work.
Yes.
All going to require effort.
And probably, would you agree, the harder, I actually released an article about it yesterday, which I got from Jim Rohn, which is the harder you work on yourself, you should be working harder on yourself than you do on your job, and that's going to basically make your job, meaning whatever your output is in life or whatever you do.
That exactly comes back to what I was saying before about working on habits rather than specific goals.
Yes.
Because working on yourself is working on your habits.
Yes.
What are the habits you want to have, which are productive and positive for you, which will enable you to be more successful in any area, anywhere you turn your hand, right?
Yeah. And when you're not doing them, your body by automatic is wanting to do them. Yes, I agree.
And again, remembering that idea, it takes on average 3 months, 90 days of consistent practice to build a new habit where it takes less energy and less motivation from you. You're more interested in doing it naturally. So just focusing on that 3 months, that's the goal. What is it I want to start building into a habit for myself?
It's not too difficult.
Right?
Yeah.
No, it's not. And it's not about doing it well.
Yeah.
It's about just consistently doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Outliers, crucial in terms of understanding that success is about learning, failure, and experience.
Yeah.
It's not about someone just instantly being so much better than someone else. So that's a crucial book. I tell you what, another book I really loved that really impacted me, which is a less common book, it was published quite a few decades ago now, was Or I'll Dress You in Mourning, which is a biography about a bullfighter called El Cordobés, and it's about his story.
Interesting.
Growing up as someone whose family was so poor that they used to boil grass to eat.
Wow.
Right? And his story of hardship of going from nothing to being the most respected, successful bullfighter in the world at the time. And the book title comes from his first professional fight where he said to his sister, tomorrow I'll buy you a house or I'll dress you in mourning. In other words, I'm going to massively succeed or be dead tomorrow.
Yeah.
And for me, that was really inspiring in terms of turning adversity to your advantage, being able to overcome really challenging situations.
Make your mess your message.
Make your mess your message. I told you, man, I'm so plagiarizing that. I love
Go
that.
for it. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And just to kind of a bit of a closing question, what does your morning ritual look like? Do you do anything that you haven't, obviously it varies when you have to do speaking gigs and tours and whatnot.
Unfortunately, my morning ritual normally involves trying to sneak out of the house super early to catch an early flight to avoid waking the kids and my wife.
Yeah.
I have to, because of my kids being so young, I really try and have more of a flexible daily approach where I, for example, run every day.
Yeah. So you're running every day?
Yeah. I'm training for a marathon at the moment, and that's
fantastic.
great. That's where goals become really handy in terms of forcing you to prioritize the right things.
Yeah.
So rather than running a specific time, I'm making sure that I'm planning my week so that I know when I'll be doing things like the running.
Yeah.
Another thing that I try to do on a daily basis is try to disconnect a little bit. So I'm not listening to podcasts or audio books or reading all the time, that I actually have some thinking space.
And how long do you do that for?
Depends on the day.
Yeah.
But I'm very conscious and deliberate about it.
Yeah.
And another thing I'm conscious and deliberate about is trying to be present on a regular basis during my day.
Yeah.
A lot of people have the habit of mindfulness in terms of trying to focus their attention on the present.
Yep.
What I try to do is I just regularly throughout my day try to make sure I'm focusing my attention on life as it's happening.
Wow.
what can I hear, what can I see, what can I smell, what can I feel in my body. Just regularly tuning in. So again, I have some sort of like overarching approaches that I'm using every day rather than them occurring at specific times. So when the kids are older, it's easier to maintain a routine.
I fully understand. That's why now I'm getting up at 5:30, so I can actually try to win the day by applying my own morning rituals.
Nice.
And then what about any coffee, supplements, anything like that? What do you eat for breakfast?
I definitely drink a lot more coffee than is helpful.
Because obviously the way your brain functions and obviously the requirements of which other people have from you to perform. Is there anything, any little tricks or hacks or anything?
Marry a wife who's far healthier than you. That's
great
my
point.
biggest trick.
My wife, she's like similar to yours, but she writes cookbooks about this stuff. So
Nice. I eat far healthier because I'm married to someone who's healthy.
And when I'm not there,
if I was left to my own devices,
you're sitting in the dark eating a hamburger.
But I think that's part of it as well. Is it recognizing, that we all have our strengths and our challenges.
Definitely.
No one's nailing it 100%.
And we've all got our different jobs as well, responsibilities.
100%.
Well, that's any closing words, any final words so people know where to get the book, they know where to research you. I think you've given us, honestly, I just want to thank you. So, I know that you have to go catch a flight, but just thanks you for carving out, this little bit of time with us. I appreciate it. I know the audience will. It was a real pleasure to meet you. As I said, when I saw you speak a few months ago, something went off in me and I'm like, okay, my goal is to get Dr. Paul Wood on the podcast. And this is before we even had the podcast. So I appreciate that.
I'm so stoked.
There's a lot of value
so
in
stoked.
that.
Really appreciate the opportunity to meet you and to be here.
Awesome. That was wicked. Appreciate it. Thank you everybody for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and found any type of value, please subscribe to our podcast, share with your friends, and give us a 5-star review on iTunes to be in the draw to win a $200 I Love Ugly gift voucher. We will be drawing a winner monthly. Good luck and see you on the next episode.